Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Archetypal Radio. I'm your host, Michael Ebbinghaus. Today on the podcast, I have my second guest, long-awaited Miss Shirley Dvir out of Oakland, California. Shirley and I were colleagues at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Unfortunately, we never got to see each other due to the nature of the pandemic, but we've been planning this conversation for some time. Shirley is a pioneer and intrepid explorer into the world of safe touch and psychotherapy. It's the role of her dissertation. It's what she's working on right now. She's been in this practice for a long time in various methods. She is the founder and lead teacher of a relational somatic healing and a licensed marriage and family therapist of over 25 years. She is currently earning her PhD at the California Institute of Integral Studies in Somatic Psychology and writing her dissertation on the use of safe touch in psychotherapy. She earned her Master's of Arts in Transpersonal Counseling Psychology from John F. Kennedy University and a BA in Social Work from Haifa University in Israel. For over 10 years, she taught as a certified Hakomi teacher at the Hakomi Institute of California, John F. Kennedy University, California Institute for Integral Studies, and Shuluf Center in Tivon, Israel. She has also supervised associates pursuing MFT licensure and currently mentors licensed practitioners. Shirley has been practicing psychotherapy since 1997 in agencies and private practice, seeing families, children, couples, and individuals. She has training in psychodynamic work, attachment, EMDR, sensory motor trauma therapy, the Enneagram, family therapy, craniosacral therapy, and body-mind centering from her teacher, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. Her main work today focuses on healing relational wounds with safe embodied touch. Her spiritual practice and meditation support how she holds her work and her teaching. She has a private practice based in Berkeley, California. It was an absolute pleasure to have Shirley on the podcast. She is just a fount of wisdom and experience, and one of the brave people who's really been exploring the use of touch in psychotherapy. In this episode, we discuss the psychotherapy of touch, transpersonal psychology, spiritual practice as a scientific discipline, the practice of Hakomi, innate healing intelligence of the body to physically, psychologically, and spiritually heal, cortical versus somatic intelligence, Wilhelm Reich and character armor, the ineffectiveness of traditional methods of analysis, conversation, preparation, and method for safe touch in psychotherapy, and the role of touch in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And I must apologize, there was something that went wrong with the recording, so you won't get to see my beautiful face for the entire session. When I speak, it just kind of focuses on Shirley, and still, still only a dozen episodes in, so still getting the hang of everything, but hey, that's how you learn, but you're getting a good dose of it now. So no worries. There's a couple of interruptions. Shirley, is a mother of two boys and taking care of a pup, and we were just very real, and we're on the podcast today. Welcome to all of the interruptions, and of course, edited what we could out. But it was a great conversation. It's one that I feel really needs to be had. There's not really an avenue for somatic, like this kind of somatic experiencing, and there's a lot of fear around it. And this is why Shirley is pursuing her dissertation and her PhD in somatic psychology to try and bring more awareness and scientific evidence and adherence to this very powerful method of what is our first language, that of touch. You can get in touch with Shirley at relationalsomatichealing.com. Like I said, she has a practice in Berkeley, California. And if you enjoy this podcast, if you find something from it, please, if you would, like the video, share it to people that you know that think that might enjoy or gain something from this. I think this is very powerful for all of us that are clinicians. And you can reach out to me, link up with me on Instagram at Michael Eben Flow. And yeah, please support the podcast in any way you see fit. I'm very open to direct messages and conversations and all of that. So without further ado, I give you Shirley Dvir. Hello, Shirley. Thank you so much for being here. We're here with Shirley Dvir. She is a psychotherapist practicing more than 25 years in the Bay Area and is currently a candidate for a PhD in somatic psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Shirley and I have been planning this conversation for some time, and it just feels so good to be here in the space with you and to hit record and actually be doing it. So Shirley, I would just love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and let us know where you're from. And I would be really interested to hear what interested you in the path to becoming a therapist, and specifically with discovering somatic modalities and the practice of safe touch and psychotherapy. Just, yeah, I would love to hear what that journey has been like for you.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. We have been talking for such a long time, and I'm glad the time has arrived.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, I'm originally from Israel, and I'm Arabic Jewish Israeli, and now living in the States for 20 years. I'm very committed to the work of healing and psychotherapy and social justice, social awareness as well. And over the years, my work has been progressing more and more into from psychodynamic to transpersonal to somatic. And I was Hakomi teacher, and then over the years fell in love with touch work and started to combine touch work in my work, and which is what I do mainly right now. And in the last 2 years, I enrolled in the PhD program at CIS in somatic psychology and focusing on researching touch in psychotherapy, mindful touch in psychotherapy. And I'm really excited about it. This is something that I wanted to do for a long time, and my kids are old enough so I can go back to school. And it's been wonderful, hard and wonderful at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm also teaching. I started to teach in the last few years here in California and also in Israel, the use of touch in psychotherapy.
Beautiful. And yeah, there's something I wanted to touch on there. You said that you kind of began in a more psychodynamic modality and moved into more transpersonal and somatic. And I'm curious what if there was anything that inspired that shift, or if there were any experiences that you had.
I think it was just a natural progression. I started psychodynamic because that's what I learned in Israel. I studied bachelor degree in Israel in Haifa University in social work, and I was more influenced in the psychodynamic there. And then when I moved here, I was really attracted to the transpersonal psychology because I was always practicing some spiritual practices, and that really called me. And then in the transpersonal, I met the somatic program there, and I felt like that was home for me. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of progression over the years and my own work on myself and working with clients. And I would say that all three of them are very present in my practice today. The transpersonal element and the somatic are not different. They are sides of the same body. The body is spirit, and spirit is the body. So I don't see them as one thing or another. And also the psychodynamic is very present, because when I touch somebody, I touch their young one too, and their relationship with their mom and their dad. And so that psychodynamic model and psychodynamic map is really present with me as well. And I'm grateful for it too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because yeah, we may be spirit incarnated in flesh, but we are still this flesh, right? And we still have all of the things that come along with that. And you mentioned that there were spiritual practices that kind of motivated or catalyzed that process into more transpersonal, because with transpersonal, it's like we can talk about it and we can theorize it, but that's really like what we're discussing right now with the somatic, right, is like really feeling it. And so I'm curious what those spiritual practices were, and what kind of experiences those might have engendered, or how that might have shifted your perspective.
Well, I think that the spiritual perspective I was always seeking for spiritual practices. And I was born Jewish, but never was satisfying for me. Just I was looking for other answers and kept searching for something that will satisfy my soul and my heart. And then I wanted to bring it to the room as a psychotherapist, because I felt like it was once allowed to talk about God or spirit, or and it felt very helpful with my clients to talk about those things. So, and today I feel that because a lot of our work as psychotherapists is trauma work. Most of our work is trauma work. And to focus just on the trauma, it feels so wrong to me. It feels just so limited. And we are so much bigger than just trauma. We're so much bigger than just what happened to us.
Mm-hmm.
And bigger is the transpersonal, is the spirit, is who we are before we were born and after we will die. And
Mm-hmm.
connect to a client to their essence, to who they are underneath their trauma, is so much bigger than just their trauma. And there's a lot of resources there. I'm not saying bypassing the trauma. The trauma is important, and I'm not minimizing them, but also to relate to who we are as essence, as more than just trauma. And there is so much more there. It brings so much resources to the clients.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to touch on, is like how powerful that can be when you have that transpersonal modality to healing the trauma. It's like, because then what is it that you're moving towards, right? It's like, well, then am I just like, am I just this body? Am I just this ego? Is it, yeah, it's really it makes life like a constant exploration and adventure in that way, because you just get to continually discover who you are.
There's layer after layer after layer. There's part and another part and another part. And that's the beauty of who we are as human beings. There is so much to discover and learn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned that you'd studied Hakomi for some time, and there may be some folks that aren't terribly familiar with that as modality. Could you give us more of a background on that?
Yes, I was trained in Hakomi for years, probably 20 years. And Hakomi is a somatic, mindful, experiential way of learning who you are. And I really enjoyed it. And it was a big part of my work and with clients and with myself. And with Hakomi, I learned that I would like to add another piece, which is the touch piece. That felt to me that if I kind of collect all what I've learned from Hakomi and my transpersonal studies and my psychodynamic studies and add the touch piece, I thought that will be amazing. And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I remember in our earlier discussions, we talked about how touch is really like the first language that we have. And coming from a transpersonal developmental model, right? It's like when we're infants, when we're fresh out of the womb, and we're feeling we're so connected, and we're so kind of merged with the universe and with mom in that way. And when we enter out into the world, then it's like that we're still kind of getting our ground, and we don't exactly know where we end and the universe begins, right? And so those early experiences of being touched by mom and dad, and a nurturing touch, or maybe a touch that was too stimulating, those are where our deepest wounds are. And traditional psychotherapy has a very difficult time getting at those, because there was no language to be able to broach them, right?
Right. Yes, touch is our first language. It's the first, it's our way to communicate through the world, is a way that we feel safe and held, and we're starting to learn that we have a body, we have boundaries, we have ourselves. And it's the first way that we know how to take care of our young ones and to make them safe and regulated. So touch is such a central part of healing and of who we are and of human nature. We can't survive without touch. There is many research around how we can't really survive without touch, and how developmentally we can be arrested or even die if we don't have touch in our life. And it's not just in infancy, it's throughout our whole life. There's research
Right.
that carries on through elderly and through later on life, how people with Alzheimer, elderly people, older people with Alzheimer that receive touch reports that they have less aggressive behavior. So I think that touch is not just important in the early stage of life, it's actually important throughout our life, in each stage, even in teenage, when the teenage kids are like, goodbye, mom. I don't need you, mom. They really do. And to find the right time and the right place to have some touch with them, it's actually really important.
Right, and that stage certainly is where they're starting to like enter into the world, right, and like start to seek safe touch from the community and from the world at large.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. There was something right there that I wanted to elaborate on. Maybe it'll come back, but I know in Hakomi and in a lot of these different modalities, there's this the body becomes kind of the seat of the unconscious, and I that just rings with such an element of truth, and that you know, like whenever we are injured, right, and there's all of these processes within our body that requires no intervention from us, right, from the thing that I conceive of as Michael, or from what you conceive of as Shirley, like, and thank God for that, right? If it was up to us, we would probably make many mistakes in the unfolding of our digestion and our heart and what have you, right? And so the body as the unconscious really, I feel like, is a scientific fact at this point, regardless of what maybe the broader structure might think. But it seems to be that particularly those early traumas get embedded within the body. It's like our body kind of holds onto it and develops chronic muscular tensions or sores or pains or whatever it might be, as a way of kind of,
sorry,
yeah, no, you're fine. As a way of almost like holding on to it for us for a time that we can actually process it.
Yeah, I really feel that in our culture today, that we came so far from the body. We are not connected to our body. In more indigenous cultures, the body and the spirit are one. There is no separation there. But in a more modern life, in our culture today, we're so far from our body. So for us, if we get a disease or we get stomachache or cancer, or we're so surprised and we start the search. And but if we are more in tune with our body and listen to the body signs and what is it trying to tell us, what's happening to our body, what is our body needing, what is our body trying to tell us, we can see it as a sign of awakening, of collaboration, of consciousness trying to rise up to our awareness. Our body, I love how Don Johnson, my teacher, says that our body is a thinking body. Our body is so much wealth of knowledge and information and wisdom in our body. And we just need to listen to it, just to pay attention to it, just to look and be attending to it and present with it. And also I see the body as consciousness as well. There's consciousness in our body. There's consciousness in our cells. And again, it's really the practice of embodiment is a lifelong practice. It's not like take a workshop and you're embodied. It's a lifelong practice. And it's really to come and to waken up cell by cell to who I am in my body, to to feel myself, to feel my body, to feel my spirit. And it's ones. The consciousness are in the cells themselves. And this is a lot influenced by the work of Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, which was the founder of Body Mind Centering. She's a great teacher of mine and a friend, who's teaching me the power of consciousness in the body, the consciousness of the cells themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's two things there that I want to just grok on and chew up, because it's delicious and beautiful. The first is that idea of consciousness being residing somewhere other than, say, the mind or the brain in particular, because that's, like you're saying, we've gotten so divorced from the body. And we could speak about how, there has been this kind of emphasis on, say, the masculine consciousness of thinking and conception, rather than the isness of reality and the body. And even our word matter, right, comes from the word mater, which is Latin for mother. And but it's an important thing to discuss. But yeah, that cellular consciousness, the idea that there could be an infinite intelligence to something like a cell, and there really is, because the cell just functions so perfectly.
Exactly. And learning about the creation of us as human beings, starting from the embryo, starting from the sperm and the egg.
Mm-hmm.
How did the egg and the sperm knew how to create what is me?
Mm-hmm.
Egg in me and the sperm in me knew how to join and how to create and to create me. And who did that? Who did that creation? For me, it's like mind-blowing questions that really helps me to really sink in to understand the consciousness in cells, in me, in the cells, even as the sperm cells and the egg cells, the consciousness in the cells themselves. They knew how to create me. And for me, it's everything right there.
Right. Even just like those processes unfolded, and now like we're able to have this conversation in this time and place as a result of that. That these cells came together and formed beings that could reflect on all of this. Wow, it's one of those ipso facto things that I certainly took for granted for much of my life. And it's we do kind of numb ourselves to just the ever present and ever unfolding miracle that is life.
Exactly.
And yeah, and like there's forms of mold, right, that can form better subway systems than the Japanese in Tokyo. That's that in a like just those little, and there's millions of examples like that.
Right. And we are idealizing the mind, which is important, but maybe it's not everything. Maybe there is a lot of knowledge and wisdom in the body too. And what will happen when we tap into the wisdom that is not just in our cortex, in our mind, but also in our body and in our heart and in our cells and in our kidneys or liver. What would that be to open up to more wisdom there?
Yeah, what would that be? Yeah, and yeah, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the and we mentioned the collaborative aspect too. Like that's the other thing I think a lot of folks have trouble believing or wrapping their minds around, is that this whole thing, or that spirit, or that this grand singular consciousness that pervades seemingly everything, right, is at its core playful, loving, and generative.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I often ask my clients, most of my work is trauma work, and most of my clients have lots of different kinds of traumas, political trauma, developmental trauma, war trauma, social trauma. There's so much. And I often ask them, when we work through trauma, I often, especially when we do hands-on work, I feel them and I hold them and I ask them to connect to who they are before they were wounded, who they were, who they are before they were born, to the
Mhm.
essence of who they are. That's much bigger than the trauma that they have experienced.
Mhm. And how have you seen that unfold in your clients when they're able to really experience that essence and be held in the loving touch, or just in your loving presence, or and their loving presence, and that thing that connects you both? What do you see happen to those traumatic experiences, and how do you see that manifest in their body and their speech and their persona and everything?
Yes, I think that when I start working with clients, I don't start immediately with touch.
Right.
I see them and I talk to them, and it takes a few sessions for us to go actually to work with touch. And I need to see their comfort level and where they are, and make sure that they feel safe with me, make sure that they feel that there is consent there. And there is a long way before we actually go to the table and actually use touch work. Because the idea is that I want them to feel that they're empowered. I want them to feel that I'm not doing something for them. I'm with them, collaborating with them. And they are their own healer in themselves.
Mhm.
I'm here to help them to facilitate that. So once we get to the table, once we feel, they make sure that they feel safe and they know that they can tell me what to do and where to move and how they don't want to touch or they do want to touch. It's very collaborative work. Once we really get there and we settle, I hold them and we settle together. I let myself open up to the bigger in myself. I let myself open up to the bigger. So it's not just me, Shirley, holding them, but I am being held and connected to the bigger. And then they are feeling that as well. So it's my presence that as I sit with them, that I let myself connect to the bigger, feel grounded, connect, and then they feel that with me as well.
Would you be willing to share in de-identified form, of course, any cases or anecdotes of healing that has occurred with clients?
Sure. There's anything in specific that you're curious about, or kind of where any?
Nothing specifically, but just using the kind of the framework or the example that you shared of just of holding them and having them connect to that essence, and
Yeah.
through your being and through your presence,
Yeah.
facilitating that for them. Yeah, what beauty has come out of that? Because I know that those moments can just be so deeply intimate and shocking in a way.
Right. Well, I think that I like to talk about my first client a lot because it was my first client that I put on the table. You know,
Mhm.
those clients I will never forget. And I just studied synchronous trainings and with my teacher Ellison Post, and I was just curious to start to combine some touch work in my work, but I wasn't quite ready. So my table was like there in my office, but not sorry, not quite open yet. And so he was very depressed, and his wife wanted to put him in hospitalization, and we were very close to that. They were very close to that. They came to his couples therapy, and then I said to him, "How about if I just studied some touch work? How about if I try with you? Would you be willing to?" I said, "Sure. I have nothing to lose. Like I'm just about to, submit myself to the hospital for depression." And we started to work. And back then I didn't know, it was more than 15 years ago. I didn't know what I was exactly doing. So I was just starting, and I was just sitting there and putting my hands there and just holding him and just listening and asking permission. Is it okay if I put my hand here? Is it okay if I held you here? And I was just sitting there holding him and listening and just listening and just seeing what the body wants to tell me. How is it going? What do you want to tell me through your body? Because he was running out of talking. He didn't like to talk to me. It was like, "Shirley, I told you all. I have nothing else to say. Like, I don't know why I'm depressed. depressed. My parents were good parents. Like I had a good childhood. My life is good. I don't know why I'm so depressed. And then in the nonverbal place, when he was not needing to talk, I find myself just listening to his body. Let his body tell me the story. Tell me what is needing healing here. And then just session after session, minute after minute, I was just holding him in that loving place. And he started to come back to life and started to feel better and better. And like within a few weeks, he was just so much better. And in a couple of months, he went back to work and completely changed his life. And when I would ask him, what helped you? What was the thing that helped you in the sessions? And he said something about being accepted the way I am. I felt like your touch was accepting me, that I felt like accepted the way I am. And it's something that you cannot really convey the message of acceptance with words. You can say to somebody, I accept you, I love you, but it's not the same, it's not transmitting the same way as the hands can say the same message of, I got you, I accept you, I love you, I'm here for you. The message that the hands can transmit are so much more powerful than the words itself. Yeah. And the couple that I worked with them as a couple and with him individually, they will be with me, I think, forever, because it was really transformative, the work that we did together and where he is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And it sounds like, because I feel like, especially in healing communities, particularly outside of psychotherapy, there's a large emphasis on like an ecstatic release, and
Right.
like a very like profound or yeah, just something vibrant, like a, we want to see like an exorcism almost occur. And it
Right.
sounds like you said, like he was kind of like a wilted flower that just started to open back up again.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly what I see with clients, that they are like kind of melting or going into depression and going into like what I will say dorsal vagal activation, which is they're shutting down, and the hands are supporting them to come back to life and to come back to themselves and to come back to a different way of relating,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it's really important to understand the role of the body in depression or mental illness, because if I did some talk therapy with him before, it just didn't work because the words were not reaching the body in the same way. And he had to feel held by me. So the words can come in as well. So I like the combination. It's not just touch. I love touch work, but it's not just touch. It's the touch combined with the words. It's me holding them and saying, notice if you can feel that you're safe here. Notice if you feel that you are wonderful just the way you are. Notice if you can feel that you are enough. Notice if you can just rest in my hands. I got you. I'm holding you. So those words are really important as well.
Right. You have to bridge both consciousnesses, right?
Yes, because we're not babies. We do have cortex, and we need to understand. We need to feed the brain so the brain can rest. We need to feed the brain and let the hands do the work, the healing.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to bridge between the words and touch and the hands. Exactly.
Right. It almost like it strikes me as kind of humorous right now that it took us so long to figure that out when, psychoanalysis was around for over 60 years without ever, the whole sitting behind the patient on the couch and just like, I'm not even here, just go for it. Right.
Well, not Reich though. Wilhelm Reich did use touch in his work. Yes.
Right.
different kind of attachment, yes.
Absolutely. And I wanted to talk about Reich a little bit. I'm glad that you bring him up. But before we go there, yeah, it's that same thing, right? Of like you can't get wet in the word water, right?
Right.
And I love that you hold both pieces, because just us as, comparing dual beings, we want to like place emphasis on one thing or the other, and it tends to be this beautiful union.
Right.
And yeah, it's like being in a partnership, right? It's like you could say I love you and fall on over the person as much as you want, but if there's not that really like non-verbal and just dance between each other, then none of us would really consider that a love relationship, right?
Right. What I'm thinking I'm thinking about Alan Shore and how he talks about that healing happens from right brain to the right brain, the right brain of the therapist to the right brain of the client, and versa, right brain of the client to the right brain of the therapist. So when we are in our right brain and the client is in their right brain, this is where healing happens. And when I heard that from Alan Shore back then in a conference in Los Angeles, I was like, this is it. Of course, healing happens when I'm in my right brain. For me, being in my right brain is being embodied. And when I'm in my right brain, I'm not necessarily in my cortex and thinking. In my right brain, I'm feeling my back body. I'm feeling my front body. I'm breathing. I'm relaxed. I am creative. I'm intuitive. I'm here in my body. And from here, I'm present. I can relate to you and I can connect to you. I don't need to think about you. I don't need to analyze you. I don't need to think, oh, what happened with your mother and your father? And I'm like, oh, I'm just receiving you here. I'm just here to receive you and being received by you. We are here in a relationship. There is a relationship between us right now. So it's really about what's happening in our field here between me and you right now at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the danger of analysis, right? Is you can just always be one thought behind reality.
Yeah. Yes.
And because yeah, like you're saying, that right brain part of us is whether it's localized to the hemisphere or not, is that part of us that really directly apprehends things and really directly confronts reality. And I feel like that's so tied to dreams as well. I feel like dreams are in that same field, and like what shows up in our dreams is exactly what shows up in our body as well.
Yes. Right. And to able to capture that in the moment and be in the moment with somebody, I think this is where the healing happens. To really be in this moment right now with everything that happens, and just to sit here for a second and just to be together. And we don't have to add so many words. Words are wonderful if we use them well. And but the healing happens in silence and in this moment, when we really feel and breathe. Yeah, and just being touched, and this is where the healing.
It is where it happens. Yeah, I love it. I love that that line. It happens in silence.
Yeah.
Of just that togetherness of just all of those things happened, all of those ways in which you closed off, all of the life that wasn't lived in as full of way that it could have been, all right here, all right now, and here we are.
That's exactly it. Clients don't need to tell me so many stories. They told the stories so many times.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like asking them, do you need to tell me this story right now? Or you can if you want to, if you need, I'm here to listen. But maybe also check and see if you just want to experience a different experience with me right now.
Right. We don't want to fall into the trap of keeping them convinced that they are who they are.
And how about letting the body tell me the story? Mind.
Right.
How about if let the body tell me the story? Just see what happens if you
Yeah.
just let the body tell me the story. If
Mhm.
the body can feel that I'm listening with my hands, I'm listening to you, and let the body tell me the story. And there's amazing stories that being unfold if you just listen.
Mhm. And is that primarily how you'll engage with touch with clients, is by holding them?
Yeah. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. There's different ways to hold, and always, 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 always with consent,
Mhm.
and always with awareness, and always with understanding that the power dynamic between us, or
Mhm.
gender dynamic, or social, it's always being talked, because it's very powerful to touch somebody. So all of that is work that we do, preparation to the touch work before we actually go to the table. We talk about all of that. How was touching your childhood? How is it for me to touch you? I'm a cisgender woman, you're a man, or transgender, or Latino, or Black. Just how is it for you that the thinking that I will touch you and hold your shoulder?
Mhm.
Because I want to make sure that all the nuances are talked about before we actually use touch. Because we don't have the habit in our culture to ask permission to touch. We're just touching. If you take your kids to
Right.
the doctor, I took my kids to the doctor not too long ago, and the doctor just
Mhm.
without even asking, I'm like, wait, 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 can we slow it down? Can we ask permission? There is a human being here,
Right.
and we touch without permission in my family. Can we please ask permission?
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And that sounds kind of exactly like the Western medical system, is just like, wow, this child's heart rate is really high right now. They must be anxious. Right? It's like, yeah, it's because they're getting touched by a stranger immediately with, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Mm,
And how can we teach? I- How can we teach our children that this is their body, and if somebody wants to touch, they have to ask permission. This is my body,
mhm,
and it's okay to say no. It's more than okay. It's great to say no.
mhm. Yeah, and I love and we've spoken about this in the past too, but the very intricate care that you put into having those conversations and acquiring consent and making sure the client feels safe. Um, how do you approach that with the client? What does that process look like to where you both feel comfortable engaging in touch?
Yes. So I think by now people know that I touch, so they come in. But still, even with that, I take my time and I ask them about how is touch been in your family of origin. How is touch in your culture? Every culture has
Hmm.
a whole new set of rules around touch.
Right.
What's allowed, what's not allowed, what's how. Um, I'm asking about touch that was done well. I'm asking about touch that wasn't done well. I'm asking about the fears. I'm asking about the longings. Because a lot of clients will they would like to be touched. They come into me for touch, but they're afraid. They say, I
Hmm.
like to, but I'm really anxious about it. I'm really afraid. So I said, great, let's just listen to that. Let's just listen to the fear and just see what is your body needing right now? What is
Hmm.
your body wants to say to you right now, to me? Let's slow it down until you fully feel a yes for touch. We don't have
Hmm.
to take a year until we get there.
Hmm.
A few months. It's not about getting there. It's really about you
Yes.
feeling empowered in receiving touch, and you feeling that you can tell me, Shirley, back off, or
Hmm.
don't touch. You feel empowered to say, not quite here. Actually, can you move to the left side?
Hmm.
I
Right. And
sorry.
please. No, I was just going to say how tremendously healing that can be, of just like, no, I don't want touch, especially if we can think of it doesn't take a leap of imagination, right, to think of what traumas have occurred,
Yeah,
that could just be, please don't touch me right now, or touch me in this way, or touch me on this part of my body.
absolutely. And this is why I'm so passionate about that. And again, most of my clients are trauma survivors, and a lot of them are sexual abuse trauma
Mhm.
survivors. And it's so healing, so healing to work this slowly with them and to have them feel empowered to know what is a safe touch, to know that they can say no, to know that they can say back off, to know that they say, please come touch me, that they are in full control of what's happening between us. It's extremely healing for them and really touching.
And just to bring like our own somatic experience into this, like my heart just opens hearing you talk about that, and like I'm not fighting back, but there are, you know, tears welling in my eyes because it's just it's so beautiful. And
it's so beautiful. I have many sessions that I'm crying with my clients because it's just so beautiful, and I just let myself cry with them and open my heart, and my heart is open. But just to attend to that level of healing when a client that had sexual abuse telling me exactly where to touch her and how to touch, and it's feeling nourishing to them. It's so rewarding to just attend to that moment. It's really rewarding.
Yeah, and being there with them, like I feel like being very open about what emotions we're experiencing in the moment, you know, and it could be, you know, that's why acknowledgement of our countertransference is so important in these, because we could be having like an adverse reaction, which we would not want to communicate to the client, right? As best as we could.
Well, if we have an adverse reaction, we need to listen to that too. So I'm really loving and learning to accept my countertransference and accept myself as human being. If I have, exactly that.
Yeah.
So if I have feelings or aversion or something, it's part of the therapy. It's part of the field. I'm not just a robot that's here to heal somebody. I'm a human being. I have my own feelings, my own reactions, and if I have a reaction, I want to accept it. I want to be aware of it. I want to have it fully embodied too. And maybe it's wisdom too. Most
right.
times it's going to be wisdom too.
Right. Be curious about it. Yeah, that's such an important point to drive home.
It's such an important piece. Like if somebody asking me to touch and I don't feel yes to touch, I will never touch. I will say, wait, let's just slow down. I just feel that I'm not feel something. I feel like a no there. I feel like that we need to unpack something here. But my body says that it's not time, it's not ready, or something is no. And can we unpack that?
Right.
Not saying I'm not going to touch you. I'm saying, let's listen to it. Let's listen. There is some wisdom there. Let's listen to it. And I'm going to be with you to unpack it and to listen to it together. And most of the time, it leads to really, really beautiful, interesting, deep places in relationship.
Yeah, and I appreciate that point too, because that feeling of a no in your body when the client is saying yes, like, wow, that can just be that's a trauma response, right? That's
Yes, exactly.
Listening to our own bodies, of course, as we should be. And yeah, we were mentioning Wilhelm Reich earlier. I want to touch on him a little bit because he was really the first, because a lot of the people that came out of the Freudian tradition, they like there's a lot of overlap between, like, say, like Jung and Reich, but Jung just like really he kind of mentions the body a little bit, and I have a sense that he knew it was there, but he was just so much more fascinated with the imagery and the story and the intellectual part of it, that he never really dove into that part of it. But Wilhelm Reich,
right,
very interesting character in psychology, and maybe went a little bit too far into the unconscious. I don't know, but he did develop that modality, and he spoke about something called character armor, which I just find so useful. And
I'm using it all the time.
there was I remember, I'll never forget this. There was an older couple on a train I was traveling on in San Francisco, and it was late at night, both of them had haircuts that looked like circa 1985 around then. And they just had, both of them had the deepest scowls I had ever seen in my life, to where like I couldn't even, like, if I tried, like mirror the affect on their face that was just their normal face. And I was like, wow, those people are in deep pain and don't want to talk about it, but it's literally written on their face, right?
Yes, I'm very grateful for Wilhelm Reich, and he's the father of somatic psychology in many ways, and really showed us, opened the door for us therapists to see the body as a vehicle to the unconscious, or as a conscious body, as a thinking body, as a way to healing, the connection between body and mind. And what I love about the character, the armoring, how did you say it?
Character armor, yeah.
Character armoring. I thought for me, it's such a useful map to see how the body takes on the burden, or the body takes on the life limitation, or what being offered to us, but we can't receive it, or like the body takes on the shape of the struggle, or the not just the struggle, but also the shape of the brilliant way to cope with life. It's not just the struggle, it's how we coping with life. We didn't have what we wanted, we didn't have what we needed, so the body found a way to cope with life, the way to survive. So the body takes the shape, takes the burden, takes the shape. If we didn't feel safe, the body will contract and kind of keep it inside. Right. If we needed to survive and to be strong, the body will be bigger and kind of expand. So I think it's really, the map is just brilliant, how the body takes shape of what life of. That's why I love to hear the stories on the table. Tell me the story. There is a story there in the muscles. There is a story there in the tissues, in the shape. Absolutely. Body took. If I need to rely on myself, because there is nobody else to rely on, I didn't have parents to rely on, I need to rely on myself, the body will take the shape, and I will be, my spine will be long, and I will just never lean, and I will know how to rely on myself. So I think it's just really brilliant to look at how the body is on the life struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most compelling pieces of evidence when we talk about where we are in our collective journey, right? Because the thing that I notice the most with people, and of course there's a ton of research and statistics on this, but like the kind of like one of the biggest health or spinal problems in this nation and in westernized nations is, of course, what we refer to as forward head posture, right? Or forward shoulder posture, because we're caved in and hunched over. Right. And when I look at that, I see a defeat, and I see a not a lifelessness, but a keeping your head down, and it's just it's heartbreaking. And I feel like touch and getting it back in touch with that, again, that transpersonal essence that is just beauty and grace and absolute power, the power to create, right? That's the coming back to life of sitting back up and pulling our shoulders back. And it's not like you can just force it, right? It's not like you can just habitually keep your shoulders back and it'll happen, because it's like you're fighting the unconscious at this point.
And what will happen if we just put our hands underneath the shoulder blades, for example, right there, and then another hand on top of the chest, and just hold it there, and just see what happens, see what the body wants to do there when it just gets attention and support. So if we have the right support, we don't need to arch, or we don't need to be stronger, or we don't need to be smaller. We can be who we are. We can be free to be who we are.
Beautiful. And yeah, I'm curious how, especially in this post-COVID world where so many of us are doing right this distance. Yeah, how would I can't imagine that there's a lot of room for, say, like distance therapy or teletherapy in your modality. And do you have any ways of bridging that, or do you kind of like do the talk and then?
I think that now we're still in COVID time. It's not quite post yet. There is still, but people are even much more craving touch and needing touch, because of the such a years of being so lonely and without touch. I think there is a huge need for that, and I see it in my practice. I see it with my students. There's a huge need to just being held. There's a huge need to just being somebody, just hold my shoulder, just place a hand over my back and hold my heart, and just for a few minutes. And there's just such a thirst for that, such a need for that. And I think that, the Zoom is great, but it's not satisfying that need of real touch.
Have you encountered any resistance or from any like regulatory bodies? Because I know that touch and psychotherapy can still be a taboo issue.
Well, this is why I'm doing my PhD, because I am still a taboo, and there is not enough research on touch in psychotherapy. Basically, I need to come up with an explanation or convey the board that will approve me to research touch in psychotherapy, because it's such a taboo. It's mainly a taboo because we're afraid of crossing boundaries. We're afraid mainly sexual exploitation. But the whole point of my teaching is that if we know how to touch, if we really are embodied and we know how to touch and we're trained in touch, the chances for crossing sexual boundary or any boundaries are very, very small, versus if you don't know how to touch and you give an inappropriate hug, or you don't know how to touch and a client is crying and asking for a hand, and they don't feel like it was the right handshake or a right hand. Healing, I just want to say something before, maybe, that before the pharmaceutical industry or revolution, touch was such a way of healing. That's how we were healed, through touch. And the pharmaceutical industry or revolution came, and touch were thrown off. And I'm wondering about how can we bring back touch that is safe and professional, and not unprofessional. Safe, professional, within the right boundary, that therapists know how they're touching, where they're coming from, that is completely ethical. Ethical touch is a big part of my work here. And that's why I'm taking my time before and asking them all the questions about touch, and very slowly, because it has to be appropriate and professional and ethical. Otherwise, it's not going to be acceptable in our profession. Which is because touch has a very dark side.
Absolutely.
And we were all wounded by touch, and there's lots of stories of inappropriate touch, and of course, sexual interaction or sexual violation is never part of psychotherapy, not touch psychotherapy. But we really need to know how to touch, and we need to be trained in that and know how to do it in a way that is ethical and professional. Because for even if you didn't have a sexual intention as a therapist, but you're a man and a client is a female and you're touching her without permission, just that could be a violation. And just make sure that you're asking permission, make sure that they are safe in every second. and you're tracking and you're receiving their answer not from their words but also from their body language. I can say yes, I'm okay, but they can be contracting.
Exactly.
So and they're holding their breath. So I want them, when I'm teaching my students, I want them to see the clues of the body, of what is a full yes versus what is so yes, and not just the words but also their body.
Yeah, and I think that's what one of the things that draws so many of us to a profession like this is it really calls us to grow in our own awareness of everything.
Exactly. Everything. Yeah.
Because when you're working with humans, right, with other consciousnesses, then it's like you that's what you're working with. You're working with consciousness itself.
Right. And you can't when you are touched, when you touch somebody, you're also being touched by them. But you can't dismiss that. This is how it is. When I'm touching my dog or my son, I'm also being touched by them or my client. So if I am dissociated and I'm touching somebody, I'm going to transmit that to them too.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I'm in my body, that I am here, that I'm present when I'm touching. It's a big part of our work. And the information that I'm receiving from them, that I can take that in, but I don't need to hurt myself as well. So I take that in as information and let it go as well. So it's a way of us practitioners learning how to not take in our clients' issues to our bodies. It's a practice, really a long life practice of knowing how to touch and not to take in, but just wash through.
Right. And there's a I would really love your perspective on this, particularly as the field is really emerging, but safe touch and psychotherapy, it sounds like this could be a very powerful intervention in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So I'm curious what your take and your perspective is on doing that. It sounds like there would need to be medicine sessions where you don't touch, right? Kind of like acclimating into that space. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that emerging field, and where do you see a place for touch in that kind of modality?
Yeah, I have a lot of I have some groups that doing research right now on touch and psychedelics, and they come in to get some advice or support or expertise. And I think it's a growing field right now, and there's a lot of room for healing in using touch with psychedelics. And I think that we need to really, again, train our therapists that working with psychedelics to know how they touch, because it's even 100 times more sensitive. And psychedelics, it can be so powerful, and also not being used well, it can harm. So we need to really be careful in how we use in touch in psychedelics, but also it can be an amazing healing work with clients. Because in psychedelics, there is no, the client can go to such an early stage of development. And then you have a baby there. And if you have a baby, you pick them up. And no, seriously, and you your hand, and you give them water to drink, and if they don't receive that, that could be very harmful for them. I am really eager to help people that are in the psychedelic field to do it right, to use touch well in psychedelic. Because when a person is using medicine, when a client is on medicine, they need to know how my hands feel like before they're on medicine. So I would like, ideally, the therapist to be working with the client before and know how does it feel like to be held? How do my hands feel like? Do you like it? You don't like it, before they are on medicine. So I would like that. Again, it's about safety. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel my hands, to know how I hold, So I would like them to be as safe as they can. And then when therapists are using psychedelics with their clients, the clients are used to their hands already.
Mm-hmm.
Not a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be quite a shock.
Quite a shock, exactly.
Beautiful. Do you have any words of wisdom or recommendation of resources for either current or aspiring clinicians, therapists, physicians, healers of all types, to either investigate whether they want to incorporate this into their practice, if they want to incorporate it into their practice now, if they want to learn about it as they're doing their training, or if they're going into this field? Yeah, what would you recommend?
You're talking about touch?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to make sure.
And just in general, honestly.
Yeah. So there are lots of training. There are training on touch and psychotherapy, or touch in somatic approaches. There's a bunch of people from the SE world that are teaching touch. There different modalities of touch. Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen just did, before the corona, just did a touch training. There's different modalities of touch. There is one book on touch that I really like. It's on developmental trauma. It's called Nurturing Resiliency by Kathy and Steve Terrell. But this is more specifically specified on developmental trauma. Some touch there, but more on developmental trauma. And we also offering training on touch in our organization or school, relational somatic healing. We offering also classes on touch, yeah, and psycho, yeah.
Beautiful, and I will definitely make sure to include that in our show notes for sure. Yeah, and Shirley, that's really all I had for you. Is there anyone that you would like to thank or acknowledge here before we end?
I think that I would like to thank my team and my students, because I would not have done this work without them, and they see the benefit of the work, and they just pushing the wind behind me, and it's just really beautiful. So I'm just grateful for the team, both in California and in Israel, and my students that see the work and just being so moved and ready to share it with the world. And so I'm grateful for everybody who were touched by touch, and the right touch, the ethical, professional, safe touch.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shirley. And that's relational somatic healing.
Yes, relational somatic healing, because we work from relationship with the body, and we're oriented toward healing, not just exploring what happened, but just actually let's go to the healing. You know what happened to you with your mother, but let's go to what is it that you're longing for right now in this moment? What is your body craving right now in this moment? And most of the time it will be connection and being held and being seen and being loved and being received.
Yes.
And the healing is about being received by another person. So we think that we're so sophisticated as human beings, but we're actually not really that sophisticated. We just need, we are sophisticated, but what we need is very simple things. Just to be held, to be loved, to be seen.
It really is a beautiful way to incarnate and form, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, beautiful. Shirley, thank you so much for your time. So through your website is how people can get in touch with you.
Yes. So yeah, relationalsomatichealing.com.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Well, Shirley Dvir, thank you so much. I'm happy to share your word with the world, and thank you again for coming on the show, and yeah, infinite gratitude and love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, and we'll be in touch.
All right.